It is now my pleasure to introduce the president of Lewis and Clark College, Thomas J. Hostetler.
Thank you, Julio. Members of the Lewis and Clark Board of Trustees, our distinguished faculty and staff, parents and family members of you, our graduating seniors, alumni among us, friends of Lewis and Clark, and of course, our graduating seniors, please let me add my words of welcome to those of Dean DePaula to this wonderful, once-in-a-lifetime celebration. I too want to acknowledge, in particular, all the mothers, the grandmothers, there may be some great-grandmothers, surrogate mothers, and possibly one or two mothers-in-law for being with us today and for sharing with us at Lewis and Clark over the last 4 years the gift of your children. A very happy Mother's Day to all of you. Indeed. As we gather here this morning, who among us cannot help but feel the high thrill of expectation? Commencement Day is certainly a day filled with expectations. Now, expectations are an unavoidable and, I would argue, even a necessary part of human existence. Without even meaning to, we create expectations to keep our lives interesting. When I was young, the term expecting was a euphemism for being pregnant, as in we are expecting our first child. Does anybody say that anymore? Charles Dickens wrote one of his most enduring and beloved novels, Great Expectations, about hope. In this case, the hope of a great fortune, but also hope for happiness and justice in a world filled with uncertainty and outright malevolence. Optimistic expectations draw us full of hope into the future and rally our spirits, even in times of trouble and uncertainty. Negative expectations about what we are capable of accomplishing can lead us into performing less well than perhaps we might otherwise have done. But low expectations can also lead to positive results, especially if we are steeled to overcome low expectations and succeed in spite of the opinions of others about our individual capabilities. As a species, we are doomed to create expectations and then to live with the consequences of seeing those expectations either fulfilled or left unmet. Maybe you can see where I'm going with this. A college is a vortex of collective expectations. When you, our graduating seniors, first arrived here several years ago, you were filled with expectations about what the Lewis and Clark experience would mean for you. You expected to grow intellectually. You expected to meet great new friends for life. You expected to encounter outstanding professors, mentors who would help you along the way, but who would also be there for you in the years to come. You also expected to be entertained, and you most certainly expected to find useful and rewarding diversions to fill your idle hours, small in number though those turned out to be. You may have expected to meet up with your mate for life, or at least to have a good time trying. As for us here at Lewis and Clark, we had our expectations of you when you first arrived. We expected you to adapt to our methods of intellectual inquiry, even as we expected you to challenge us with your high intelligence and inquiring minds. You are, after all, by all possible metrics, the smartest class ever to graduate from Lewis and Clark. It's true. We expected that somehow you would fit into our community, even as we hoped that you would confront us with our assumptions about how our community works and that you would make suggestions about how we might improve it. We expected that you would adopt our values, hoping that you might even surpass us in our efforts to fulfill our calling as a college of character and conscience. Well, now we're at graduation time, and if ever there were a moment when we need to pause to reflect on how well all of our shared and individual expectations have been met, this is that moment. For my part, I sincerely hope that the great hopes that you first felt when you arrived here on campus have been realized. More than that, I hope that you've discovered new expectations for yourselves for the future as you examine the next steps to pursue in your life's journey. I think I can speak for all of my colleagues here when I say that you have fulfilled superbly well our expectations of you over these last few years. You have challenged our assumptions about the world and broadened our horizons by your being here. You have shown us that there are better ways to run a college, and occasionally we have actually listened to your suggestions in this regard. And you have certainly lived up to our expectation of you as members of the rising generation, whose birthright and duty it is to challenge the status quo in addressing the pressing issues of our day, the preservation of the environment, the continued oppression of the innocent in the troubled areas of our globe, the quest for an equitable and balanced prosperity for all the peoples of the world. But now it is time for us members of the Lewis and Clark community to turn the tables on you and to charge you with our own expectations of you for the future. In the course of the last 4 years or so, we have striven mightily to provide you with the tools to go into the world and achieve great things. And now you need to know that we expect to see some results. First, we expect, and your parents certainly expect, that you will go out into the world and make a living. Either now or in the very near future after graduate or professional school, we need you to enter into the productive workforce and create value for the global community. I'm not speaking only of material value, although that would be nice. I'm also speaking of the value of fresh ideas and creative approaches to solving the world's problems. I charge you to be productive and to contribute in whatever ways your talents and your consciences dictate. Second, we expect you to keep on learning, whether in graduate or professional school, whether in your new job, in a traineeship, or an internship somewhere. Exploration and discovery for you should be a lifetime endeavor, and we expect you to keep on expanding the horizons of your knowledge of the world through uncommon journeys. If you have learned anything during your time at Lewis and Clark, it is that you have only barely begun to grasp the outlines of the totality of human knowledge as it exists at this point in history. We expect that the native curiosity that first brought you to Palatine Hill will continue to flourish in your hearts and souls in the months, years, and decades to come. But third, and perhaps most important, we expect you to continue to speak truth to power and never to relent in expressing your idealism for just causes. We expect you never to accept conventional wisdom without questioning the motives of those who purvey it. The one thing we knew about this class when you first arrived here was that as a group you are very much an in-your-face sort of crowd when it comes to things that you want to know and things that you believe in. I want to encourage you to keep it up as you go out into the world beyond our hedges. Over 160 years ago, the poet James Russell Lowell penned words that still ring true today. Though the cause of evil prosper, yet the truth alone is strong. Though her portion be the scaffold, and upon the throne be wrong, yet that scaffold sways the future, and behind the dim unknown standeth God within the shadow, keeping watch above his own. Now, I'm in no way suggesting that truth is a her, nor that you embrace the notion of an anthropomorphic deity overseeing the good works of her or his people in the world. No president of a decidedly secular college would ever be so foolish. But I would suggest that the world is full of those whose motives are not those of seeking the highest good, and seeking the highest good and combating the forces of ignorance and hatred, my young friends, must be your calling. Regardless of your religious or spiritual bent or lack thereof, our expectation of you is that you will be conscientious seekers of the truth, and that the spirit of frank inquiry that you have learned here at Lewis and Clark will remain with you throughout your days.